everybody. How's everybody doing? Welcome to Philo Sapience, where religion meets reason, and we're back with another English stream. I hope people join, and our English streams probably need to, gather a little bit more audience. But anyhow, let's begin. What do we have? I think Nadeem told me that there was this debate that took place between Mohammed Hijab and someone called Destiny. I haven't seen Destiny at all. I don't know what his arguments were, but then we decided let's do it. We had another one that we wanted to do, but then we thought we'll wait for Kelly to join in whenever he does. So yeah, welcome to Philo Sapience, and I hope everybody's doing good. How are you doing, Martin?
I'm good.
I think we're doing an English stream maybe another 2 to 3 weeks, right after. Yeah.
What is that? Sorry.
I said we are doing an English stream after maybe 2-3 weeks or so. I guess I keep saying that always, and maybe that's why a couple of days.
Yeah, it's been probably a while. Yeah.
So yeah, any prelude that you have? Any stage do you want to set up before we review this?
No, you have a prelude. Well, I think first of all, I think we were unable to get the actual footage of Mohammed Hijab debating Destiny from the Oxford Union. I don't think it's been released yet. The only available footage is in the possession of Mohammed Hijab himself, apparently, and at least that's what I saw in my brief research for it. So I'm not sure why Hijab has possession of it versus anybody else. Possibly because his film were permitted to record and they released it early as well, whereas maybe Destiny's team hasn't released it yet, and the Oxford Union hasn't released it yet. That's the only explanation, I think.
Yeah, and surprisingly, maybe. So these guys always have this. They run this tactic of not giving rights to the other person if they are recording. Right. This happened with, I think, one of the debates with Hamza and somebody else, right? Or maybe even that happened with Alex O'Connor, right? When he debated with Hijab, right? They didn't give him the footage to post it on his website, so he never had that actually, right? Never did get. He just maybe ran a review of the review of Hijab or something like that, right? So they have had a track record of not giving the footage to the other party, and they keep all the rights and everything. And I don't know whatever that thing was, but yeah, I tried to find it on Destiny's YouTube or otherwise as well, right? And Oxford Union as well, but I couldn't get any hold of it. But anyways, yes, I think so. That's about it. I think. And one thing that I really desperately tried to find, Martin, and you'll tell me what exactly the agreed upon title of the debate was.
I think it's Islam versus atheism.
That's about it, right?
I think it is.
Which is so Islam versus atheism, which fits the world, reality better, but it's a better worldview or something like that. It has to have something as post-Islam versus atheism with regard to certain things, right? Mm-hmm. So what that is, I just couldn't get a hold of it actually.
Yeah, we'll find out in the video mainly. I think the video should.
Okay, let's see. Yeah.
So just to let viewers know again, then we're just doing a review of a reviewer reviewing the video. That way we can review both the video and the reviewer's review.
So the review that we are running here to review basically. So the aim is, as Martin said, aim is to review the original debate and not the reviewer's review. Maybe now since we have the review running here, so we'll review his remarks as well. That's going to be a point because this is coming from another Muslim apologist named Rami Al-Khalil, right? So you'll see it. So we'll review his remarks as well. But the original intent, as Martin said, is to review the original debate. But we couldn't get a hold of it anyway, and so it's only coming to us through, some secondhand reviews or something like that, right? So bear with us in that regard. But the aim is to just review the original debate of whatever we can get from these reviews, right? So without any further ado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add that. So this is Rami Al-Khalil's review, and let's listen to it.
This is going to be a blind reaction, but let's jump into it. I'm going to conduct this like this. I'm going to play it, and then I'm going to pause every once in a while and give my thoughts instead of giving my thoughts every time I think of them, because I want you guys to be able to enjoy this with me as I'm watching. So I'm not going to pause too often. When I do, I'll go on for a few minutes.
There's one thing: stable, uniform, the extent to which it allows life to exist within it. From every small atom to the largest of celestial spheres, we see incredible goal-directedness within the cosmos. Now, the question is, what is the best explanation for that? Is it a source of knowledge, or is it a lack thereof? This is the question that must be asked. Is it a source of knowledge, or is it a lack thereof? Another question that could be asked is that did something come from nothing? Is it conceivable, intelligible, or plausible for something to come from nothing, that the universe came from nothing? Did the universe generate and cause itself? Well, to suggest that the universe was generated or caused itself is tantamount to saying that a mother gave birth to herself. And to suggest that there's more than one ultimate source of being, more than one necessary existence, is tantamount to saying that you can have more than one mother to one sole child. Therefore, it is clear that monotheism, the idea of one source, that is the foundation for everything that exists, is the only reasonable conclusion.
All right, so far, amazing intro, great introduction, and very reasonable questions.
All right, so to start off with, Madan, I think quite a few things have been said by Hijab. Okay, first thing, he starts off with saying, okay, we can all agree upon that this world is, this universe is regular, structured, and all those things. I don't think any scientist would agree with that. I don't think any philosopher would agree with that point. Of course, there are caveats to it, right? We do our physics and mathematics, or physics rather, I would say, not mathematics. Mathematics is just a tool, basically. But we do our physics assuming that the world is regular, and then world looks regular to us as well, in certain aspects, right? But it's not completely regular. If maybe Hijab needs to go and see the microwave background, the cosmic microwave background. It is not regular. If it were completely regular, there won't be any any matter or any galaxies would form if it were completely regular, right? So there are pockets where universe is not regular. There are laws where you say these laws most of the times work regularly. Yes, you can say that. But then it's not consistent. Our limit is only to our visible universe. But then there might pockets, maybe billions and billions of light years away, where the laws may have certain different manifestations. We don't know that. We assume it to be consistent and regular because it works for us, and that's one of the things. Our physics is based on assumption of regularization over there. So that's one of the things. So I don't think that anybody would say that we absolutely agree with that. Yes, I would say we agree to it, but then there are certain limits to it. We don't 100% say that it's true. And then the second thing, he says nothing comes from nothing, right? I think that's another assumption. I think if you define something, if you define nothing as absolute nothing, think of it like this. Say that if something comes out of something, then that something is not nothing, right? So by definition, you have limited nothing to that whatever from which nothing could arise, right? It has no potentiality, right? So by definition, you have declared that nothing can come out of nothing, right? So there's nothing, it just can't exist, right? By definition. And then the third point that he made is, I think he used to use some different analogy. Can a mother give birth to, and that's hence the title of hence the title in the thumbnail. We have put that, can a mother give birth to herself or something like that, right? Again, he says, can a child come from multiple mothers or something like that, something of that sort. I think what he misses, hijab here, I think, is that all that he applies to universe can be applied to his God as well, to Allah as well, right? Can Allah come from nothing? He would say, no, that's a wrong question to ask. Why is it a wrong question? He would say, no, Allah has always existed eternally, right? There's no beginning. And then, you can extend the same thought for universe as well, whatever that may be. I mean, I'm not saying this manifestation of the universe, which, some scientists take back to, Big Bang or whatever, right? Whatever the manifestation it had before that, right? Whether it was a wave function or maybe a multiverse or whatever it was, right? Maybe that thing existed forever. It didn't require a mind. It doesn't require a consciousness, right? So I think that's my critique. I think this whole argument is so flawed, and we have talked about it so much that feel like I'm just going. It's deja vu, basically. I'm just running the same arguments again and again and again and again. So yeah, that's my thought, basically. Martin, you want to add something to it?
Yeah. Well, before I proceed, I think you said a lot of the stuff that I may have said anyway. But before I proceed, we've got a commenter here who's constantly bombarding.
I think what we'll do is Mystic Seven Spider, right? So Mystic Seven Spider, I know you comment a lot. You want me to debate anyone. I bring them here.
Well, let the audience first see what the comments are before addressing it.
Yeah. Shall we start from the very beginning?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. All right. Mystic Seven Spider says, "Cope making content to dekha nahi Orthodox Muslim ki stream pe," right? So he's some desi guy, right? So he's writing in mixed of transliterated Hindi and English, right? He said, "Cope making content," right? That's fair English. You weren't to be seen somewhere where the Orthodox Muslims stream. So he wants me to go to this Orthodox Muslims stream. I don't know. Have you heard this guy?
No, I've never heard of the Orthodox Muslim. Who is the Orthodox?
Yeah, I don't know. I may have heard him, and he has some decent understanding of philosophy, I would say, but nothing great, I would say. So anyway, let's read the next. Day 69, making content and avoiding hopping into the. So he can't even write English, right? He wants to write hopping, and writes hopping, basically. भाई थोड़ा इंग्लिश तो सीख के आ जा, लिखना तो सीख के आ जा, मिस्टिक सेवन स्पाइडर। भाई तेरे बस नाइट में रहो एक बार, बस देख तू अपना। Again, it's just like a ad hominem, right? खून से लिख के सकता हूँ कि तू रो देगा स्ट्रीम में. So he's saying, I can write with my blood that you'll cry over on his stream, right?
Okay. Well,
I don't know where these people are coming from.
What running?
I think we should go to his stream. Let's see. Let's see if he can write it with his blood. I'll invite him to this stream. Open his camera.
So Mystic Spider. First of all, we've never heard of you, and we've never heard of Orthodox Muslims. So how could we be running? You're not really referring to me. So, but how could Philo be running from somebody he's never even heard of? To run from somebody requires you to actually acknowledge their existence, be aware, be cognizant, and then feel some sort of fear or apprehension, and therefore depart from this situation.
Exactly.
Move away from it.
Yeah.
We don't even know he exists. So obviously, but whatever the case, if you want us to debate this person, Orthodox Muslim, why don't you just invite him? We're live now.
Yeah, ask him to drop by, have a conversation. We'll open the stream.
We're going to be live for maybe.
Or not, make him fear us, right? neither am
We are right now.
neither am I afraid of him, right? I have my ideas.
Yeah,
I know my philosophy.
Yeah.
I know my logic works well. Same here for everybody in this stream. Everybody has good understanding of logic. Everybody has good understanding of philosophy. Somebody knows philosophy better than I do, and that's it is. Maybe he has better understanding than I have of philosophy, but I'm not afraid of him. You know, maybe you can ask him to drop by here, and I'll learn a thing or two from him, and maybe I'll teach him a thing or two as well. Right? I'll tell him why his thoughts are wrong, or maybe right. So not afraid of anybody, not afraid to go to anybody's stream, right? So you might just want to drop him a note, maybe one of his comments, right? One of his videos and comment section, that hey, there is this channel, Philo Sapience, they talk philosophy and they talk deep philosophy. We want to have a conversation, and let's see, from there we can have a conversation with him, right? So you need to do a little bit of a messenger, quote unquote, job, right?
Yeah. Anyway, let's go back to the
yeah, let's go back to okay, anything. Okay, let me ask you this last time, and then I'll probably not heed at you, because I think you seem like a troll. What have you learned from him that you can come here and say, hey, this is the argument, beat this argument, right? Maybe I'll open the stream for you. Just drop by, present that one of the best argument that you have, or your idol, what's his name, Muslim, whatever that guy is, right? Yeah, Orthodox Muslim has, right? And then we'll see if it has any weight or not. It passes our litmus test or not. Until you do that, I think you'll be ignored, right? You'll be considered a troll. Okay, let's move on then. Martin, before now, if you want to go back to this, if you want to say anything.
No, I would say that Mohammed Hijab is making a typical argument from regularity now for some reason, or order, and I'm not sure that is even a version of the fine-tuning argument, which it doesn't seem to be. Any popular version of the fine-tuning argument actually uses, for example, certain variables and constants, and does a probability-based assessment, or tries to. And it seems as though Hijab's presentation has gone a bit weaker, in the sense that it's avoided talking about that. So he's creating his own sort of variant argument or something regarding orderliness and regularity, and then merging it with some form of either kalam or causal contingency, dependency contingency argument or something like that. Right? So he's trying to merge the two together. I mean, was I wrong? Am I wrong in my assessment that he's not mentioned any variables or constants?
No,
made the argument.
This is like an odd presentation. We see the regularity. So this is like argument from the teleological argument, kind of, in a sense, right? It's a design, or kind of a mix of design and then fine tuning, right? So that's sort of a argument. But then I think he neither goes here nor goes there, basically, right? So, but I mean, I just didn't take it as if he's presenting any particular argument. I just said whatever he's presenting anyways is not considered to be right. Nobody says that this world is absolutely regular, right? We assume regularity, right? All because it makes it better for us to understand the universe anyways, right?
Yeah.
Our physics runs better if we assume regularity. Otherwise, it will
So in terms of the orderliness of the universe, the thing about that is, what do we necessarily mean by that? If you were to look at the various different systems that we have in place, if we attempt to kind of make predictions about it on a fine-grained level, it's very difficult. For example, it's very difficult to map multiple complex systems together. And then when you look at it at a downstream level, fundamentally at bottom, the universe seems to be governed by quantum mechanics. When you take that into account, there is a lack of predictability. If that's what you mean, then there isn't that sort of predictability or orderliness. Now, I'm using predictability and orderliness synonymously there. Like if something is orderly, you would have regularity. And in fact, it's only at some certain level, macro level, that it is regular. But when you start merging the various different systems together, it is quite unpredictable and chaotic. And hence you have stuff like chaos theory to describe the fundamental nature of the universe, which is highly unpredictable. So we kind of artificially sometimes create stuff like Newton's equations, and we make the universe predictable. But at some level, that is artificial. It's an artificial construction. So even Newton's formula is not consistent. Newton's formula is ever changing in some sense. Well, not ever changing is not the word. It's a best attempt that we kind of what's the word?
Understand.
We eliminate
to make the world understand.
Yeah, here's the better way. We ignore the noise. We ignore the noise. We ignore the messiness of the world. Right? So if you hear me clearly, we ignore the noise and we ignore the messiness.
Yeah, totally.
Right? And the reason for that, it's just on a basic level, it's good enough to have Newtonian principles to govern, let's say, the pool table or the tree, the ball dropping, or even rockets. Right? It's kind of good enough. It's good enough. But if you wanted to really be precise about what's actually going on there, that equation is not sufficient. We shave off the unnecessary numbers in order to oversimplify for basic communication. But reality is, guess what? Every time you drop a ball, the Newtonian mechanisms governing it will probably give you a little bit of a different outcome than before, right? Because there are overlapping systems here that affect the ball dropping. For example, the radiation from, let's say, various different planets, Wi-Fi and signals going through the apple, the dents that form on the apple, moisture, any other extraneous gas that might hit and have contact, any additional molecules, debris that accumulates on the apple. This will change the shape of the apple, even minusculely, that it affects the results differently.
No, I think, I mean, you're right, Madan, but even very simpler example would be just Newtonian mechanics works by and large at a certain scale, but if you go way too large, it fails. If you go way too small, it fails. For example, if you go into quantum realms, Newtonian mechanics completely fails over there, right? I mean, not completely fails, but it's not applicable over there, right? But if you go to very large masses, let's say if you go closer to black holes and stuff, or neutron stars, then again Newtonian mechanics doesn't work as well.
That's right.
So see, this is the thing, right? Any law that you think is for regularization has its limitations, and there are exceptions when it doesn't really work as well. Mm-hmm. And then other theories start to kick in, basically, right? So the world we see, basically, we imagine it to be regular because it gives us approximate results that fit to what we understand better. But then that's not absolutely.
You have to be extremely reductionist.
So the point I'm trying to
you have to be extremely reductionist to come up with a theory of everything. We don't have a theory of everything. Precisely
we don't have.
Yeah. Precisely because of that. So what we're kind of doing is we're looking at disparate systems that work and operate seemingly at a level of shallowness.
Yeah.
But when you take a microscope to it, take a fine-grained approach, and you see the interconnected systems, reality is not as predictable, because it's like looking at a clock and being able to predict where it's going to go, not realizing that the clock is submerged in a sea of chaos or something, right? Yeah, there's drops of stability in an ocean of chaos. And that's kind of, you know, and then the chaos and the drops of stability is interacting with the chaos, right? And so in order to have a real system, we need a theory of everything that predicts the chaos with the seeming stability that we've got, but we don't have that, right? However, let me give you
we probably can't have a theory of everything, and that's what I'm saying. We probably just can't have a theory of everything because there is no regularization. Maybe there is a regularization and we haven't arrived. That's also a possibility. We haven't arrived at theory of everything, and one day we might be able to arrive an approximate theory of everything, right? TOE as it is called, right?
Yeah.
But then it is also possible that there is no regularization for
there
us.
Is no, because the universe might be fundamentally indeterministic.
Yeah, fundamentally indeterministic, right? So that's one of the things, right? I think. I mean, yeah. All right, shall we move on, Madin, with that then?
Before we do, and then so okay, let's just grant for a moment then there is orderliness, because we're not disputing the fact that there is order and stability. We're just disputing the overwhelming claim that we have a picture perfect understanding of our of a shallow, superficial, cartoonish understanding of regularity. We don't have that. We don't have the cartoonish regularity. We've got a very artificial sense of our regularity, but at bottom the universe seems to be quite random and chaotic, and that's what modern physics is exposing, right? There is indeed a constellation of stability, but when you look at it closely, stability kind of dissipates or disappears, you know. But let's grant for a moment that there is some form of stability, but even that sort of stability, I mean, he's saying that then he goes to say, well, it didn't come from nothing, because nothing produces nothing. It doesn't come from, can't create itself, because it means it's tantamount to a mother giving birth to itself. I think both of those explanations can be somewhat disputed. I mean, I generally lean towards the direction that yes, nothingness will produce nothing, or if it has the potential to create something, then it's not really nothing, right? But the reason why you could potentially still dispute those two is that we don't, in terms of, if you want to be purely clinical about it and think about what nothing is, there is another explanation, and we just might not be able to resolve the dispute behind it, like which one is correct. So in one hand, you might have the idea that nothingness is unbound. Nothingness doesn't have the potential to do anything. If it had the potential for things to arise from it, then it is not nothing, because it has one thing, which is the potential to things arise from it, and that's not nothing, right? Another view might be the following: that nothingness is unbounded, unconstrained, and has no governing principles or rules. Because it has no governing principles or rules, it has the possibility to do everything. It both sound like contradictions, right? So a view from that might be that neither of these are sensible positions. But in the philosophical literature, there's various different viewpoints on this. I personally think that's what I've said there is kind of nonsense. But I don't have the mental capacity to really ground myself with great conviction on that. I do know, however, plenty of philosophers, they dispute this. And some people offer the view that nothingness is the emptiness, it has no potential, etc., and therefore it won't create anything. Other people think that nothingness, because it has no rules, no constraints, no barriers, things will form. Because if you said that thing was not nothing, if you said that can't do anything, but nothingness is it won't be able to do anything, then you're imposing a barrier on nothing. But that is something, right? To impose a barrier on nothing turns it into something, right? So in one hand you have, if it has potential, it's not nothing. On the other hand, you have, if it has a barrier, it's not nothing. right? And people dispute over that. Some people say both are nonsensical positions, so nothing can't exist. Some people gravitate towards the former, some people gravitate towards the latter, and there's genuine philosophical disagreement about that. So that's the first thing I'd say about that. But again, we don't necessarily know that the universe was nothing at some point, right? So it might be scraping at the bottom of the barrel for hijab to really just regurgitate that, because lots of atheists don't even make the argument that anything came from nothing. The universe might be eternal. And I don't think did he address the infinite regress point? I didn't hear anything about that.
No, he hasn't presented that. He hasn't.
So that's another open possibility, infinite regress. And he might argue about, Hilbert's hotels or infinite regress is impossible or it's logically contradictions. We can go into that if he raises it. We just don't think that's the case.
No, I don't think he hasn't raised it. So we just don't want to just touch upon it. But
exactly.
And
the final thing is that the universe can't give birth to itself. And that makes intuitive sense that the universe can't make birth to itself. But if you imagine the universe to be some sort of, for example, circular loop, right? Where, A turns into B and B turns into C and then C turns into A, and then A turns into B, then B turns into C, then C turns into A. There's nothing wrong with that. So in that sense, it might be logically possible for the universe to create itself. What we don't mean is that A creates A, is that there's an intermediate between A and the creation of A, which is B, C.
There are Big Bang models, which are kind of, like that, cyclic
models,
conformal cyclic cosmology, right? CCC.
Yeah.
There is one of those kind of models, basically, right? There's a contraction. Basically, universe falls into itself, then it goes back into another universe, and there are so many theories which you can say it's akin to giving birth to a mother giving birth to itself, or maybe a mother giving birth to herself in many copies, basically cloning it many times, basically. And there's nothing wrong in it, because just because your intuitions doesn't align with it doesn't mean that universe has to follow that. There are other models as well. Carol Chan model, basically, right, which says that time goes into reverse, and then at the Big Bang it reverses its direction. That's also a possibility. And these models are presented not just because they seem like just they are hypothetical. They are, of course, hypothetical, but there are formulations which they present to make them seem more plausible than your God hypothesis, basically, right? God from nowhere, from his own essence, God created the universe, right? That's again a very big hypothesis, right? Intuitively, it makes more sense because you see people creating, and then in your very simplistic theological worldview, a God can do anything and everything, and so it doesn't kill it doesn't defy your intuition, but that needs a very high level of justification as well. So yeah, I think it's I don't think any of these hypotheses make one more true than the other ones, basically, right? Your God hypothesis versus a cyclical conformal cyclical cosmology, or Carol Chan model, or any of the other models, loop quantum gravity, or whatever you may have, right? So anyway, Martin, let's move on, because we have too much to cover and we only have 30 more minutes to
Okay, carry on. Yeah.
Seems like the audience is very engaged. So I think this is where hijab really thrives, and may Allah bless him for the good that he does. I think it's really nice to see him in this kind of forum again.
Another question that must be asked: what is the purpose of life? Imagine going to work. You don't know who your boss is. You don't know what your role is. You don't know what you're doing there. But here we are in the career of life, and we don't know what our purpose is. The purpose of life is to align the finite with the infinite. The purpose of life is to submit to the lawgiver. The purpose of life is to submit to the ultimate source of all creation. That's why prophets and messengers were sent aforetime: Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and for us, the final prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And these prophets came to expound on this truth, to tell people to submit to God. And they came with an evidence for their prophethood. As for the Prophet Muhammad, his evidence is that he came with a preserved religion. The Quran is preserved in a way that no other ancient book is. There's a falsification test within the Quran, challenging humanity to find a contradiction within it, challenging humanity to try and produce a chapter like it. And the Prophet of Islam made predictions that were so frequent and so precise that no other figure in human history made them. For example, he told us that the Roman Empire and the Persian Empire would both fall to the Muslims. Now, according to Barnaby Rogerson, who is a historian, non-Muslim historian, he said that the similitude of the Arabs at that time taking over the Persian and Roman Empire is the same as Eskimos taking over Russia and America. Imagine what kind of a wild prediction this is. And this is one of many predictions that obviously I don't have time to expound here. The question is, what does atheism have to offer? Atheism has no explanatory force whatsoever. Atheism is a negation. Atheism has no ontological status. Atheism cannot describe or explain morality, rationality, consciousness. Atheism brings nothing to the table. With that, I conclude with Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wow. Okay, so that was very well done, especially.
Madan, would you like to go first on this time?
Yeah, so I'll take it backwards. So he says atheism is a negation, right? Or something like that. Yeah. So what's the title of the debate exactly? Did we really get it?
No, I think it's still Islam versus atheism, but then it's not really clear exactly what he wants to say. Basically, what is maybe I'm not getting it completely right as to which is a better worldview. I would say that seems like the most plausible title of the debate.
So maybe the debate title was wrongly framed. I mean, it depends how you look at it. So if you just take atheism to be a rejection or disbelieving in God, right? So then atheism wouldn't, in that case, be a worldview to explain everything else. Like I have explanatory power or theoretical power to explain things, right?
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand that, and you're right. Sorry, I'll just steal 10 seconds from you. I mean, somebody saying that something doesn't make sense doesn't mean that you have to have an explanatory power. I think there's no rule by which it says that if you negate something, if you say, hey, you are wrong, that doesn't mean that I have to present what is right. Okay, go ahead, Madan. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, kind of. It depends, right? So if this debate title, I don't know how they framed it, etc. Is atheism true versus Islam? But you will have ancillary arguments which are correlated to the point in order to establish the truthfulness of atheism, right? So it doesn't really matter, right? So for example, if you have a universe and you want to explain whether or not it is better explained under atheism or theism, or in particular Islam, you can weigh the arguments for theism or Islam against the arguments for atheism for Islam, right? And you can also make arguments for naturalism or physicalism or evolution, in terms of like evolution, naturalism, physicalism, how the universe may have formed, and so on. And naturalism is the thesis, or physicalism is the thesis that there's nothing but physical entities, or everything is ultimately reducible to physical entities. Even if there is non-physical things, they ultimately are boiled down to physical things. And naturalism is very much similar to that. There's various different definitions of naturalism, but you can make an argument for one of those, and it would exclude, by definition, a theistic model being true. And by doing so, you prove your main thesis, which is atheism is true and Islam is false, right? So this is a bit of a straw man, or a bit of a fallacious point on part of hijab when he says, well, what does atheism have to offer? Because it's merely just one question. Yeah, he's right, but he misrepresents or misunderstands, or is being foolhardy and or deceptive, that the arguments for how to explain the universe isn't a question of atheism. It's a question of of other stuff, which one, is a question of proving, let's say, naturalism. It's a question of proving physicalism. And once you prove those, it's a definitional consequence of proving those that atheism is true. So atheism may not have explanatory force if taken in that definition of atheism, where it's just reduced to that one question. But naturalism does have explanatory force. Physicalism does have explanatory force. And if destiny then proceeds, or any other debater then proceeds to make arguments for naturalism, he may not even spell out that this is an argument for naturalism. We will identify it by the sheer force of his argument, that the universe is better predicted if God doesn't exist, because of this is what we would expect, versus this is what we'd expect if God existed, or etc. By doing this, by virtue of establishing those things, he already explains that atheism is true. Right? So, yeah. So I'm not sure. So
totally.
Yeah.
So okay, you want to you have certain point to finish, then otherwise I'll jump in.
No, I want to address that point, because everything else that he says, he just asserts. There's prophecies, the linguistic argument, or there must be a purpose. These are kind of just asserted. He didn't provide any evidence. Apart from the last
I just wanted to touch upon those, briefly.
Yeah, he apart from the last one where he said there is a prophecy regarding predicting the decline of Romans or something. Apart from that one, there was no real substance or evidence for anything else.
Yeah. I think I'll touch upon a few things, right? I think one of the things that he asserted, that monotheism is the foundation or source of all existence. Maybe it's the only reasonable conclusion, because it explains, why there is purpose to, everybody, purpose to life and purpose to, I think there is this question could be asked to, those Muslims as well, as to, do you always have to have a purpose? Is that true by definition, in a sense that if you're in Jannah, what is your purpose then? If you're in heaven, what's your purpose? You're merely like a robot over there, pretty much. There's no purpose. You have attained whatever you wanted to attain, right? So if you are in heaven and you don't have a purpose, why do you have to look for a purpose here on earth, right? And that's because you think that this life is too short, and you feel like you have been cheated by being born into this universe, right? And that's one of the feelings, and that's your deepest feeling that maybe propels you to think about, and that's probably what propelled thinkers of 14th century back, or maybe 2000 centuries back, or whatever you may have, right? Christians or Muslims, or even Greeks and everybody. And that's why they came up with all these hypotheses that you'll get to meet your loved ones whom you lost in battles and everything, right? All these things, right? So there you can have an explanation for all these thoughts, basically, right? And the point that I'm trying to get over here is the purpose of life. I don't think you can say you have an absolute purpose of life, whether it's here or whether it's in heaven, right? You can't have that purpose in heaven. Then why do you need it over here? And people do make their own purposes as well, right? And let's say there is some need to have, or there is a deep desire for you to have a purpose in life, right? That doesn't give you
I think in heaven you do have a purpose. I mean, the purpose is just to worship God in some sense through every activity. It's just an eternal
no. You're taking a Muslim perspective here, right? And yeah, that's what they say, right? That's the purpose here, right? But I'm saying in the purpose in heaven, you're saying in heaven that's the purpose?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. Would you if you didn't worship, what would happen? Nothing would happen, right?
So I think
what's the purpose then? What are you trying to achieve with that?
I think that is the purpose.
You already got whatever you wanted to. I mean, how do you define purpose?
How are you defining purpose?
You have a purpose to achieve something.
Yeah.
At least that's my definition.
I mean, I think you're conflating a lack of free will with purposelessness. But or
No,
something.
not lack of free will with purposelessness. I'm just saying, if you don't have a, do you
Because
usually, if
yeah.
your purpose, when you have a purpose, you aim for something, you want to achieve something with that purpose, right? Or not? I'm asking you,
Yes,
Adil.
but why is
Yes,
that?
right.
Why is that? So that's how I
So
define
in
purpose.
heaven, what's the purpose of worshipping?
So I'm not sure why in heaven you wouldn't have purpose, because you might have sub purposes that you kind of accomplish or achieve or gain. So
What would you achieve? What would you
whatever goal
achieve
that you
with
want in
those?
heaven, that you will go and achieve it. That will be a purpose, right? So you're
No,
living
but
eternal
you don't
life.
need a purpose, right? You don't need a purpose. What you want, you'll get, right?
Sorry.
For heaven, what do you
Hmm.
want a purpose for?
I don't know what you mean. So if by purpose we just mean goal achievement, right? If
Right.
that's the definition of purpose, then if you get everything that you want, there is still goal achievement involved. The mechanism is different. Everything will be
No,
achieved,
goal
but
achievement is for something that you struggle, right? I mean, there's no purpose that you can get with just a thought, right?
so you're adding another variable to purpose, which is that you must struggle now to achieve it, right?
I mean,
And I'm not sure.
but
I'm
what
not.
is the? I mean, it's a. Then what's the purpose? Then if you just can get by a, just by flipping your fingers, so however you want to, and just blink of an eye, something you can. Do you have a purpose in that? I don't know. I mean, maybe
You form a
I have
goal
a
when you
wrong
achieve the
understanding of
goal.
purpose.
You'll fall for you. I don't think the complexity or difficulty of achieving the goal makes it more necessarily. I think
No, I think
that
I think
might
it
be.
makes it because you have to you see. I think where we are differing, I think, is for me a purpose is something that has a time limit involved, right? It's not immediate. I thought and I got it, right? That's what I'm thinking is not purpose. That's something you calling purpose. I think in my book, that's not purpose. So I think that's the difference between the two of us.
Well, there's different.
Let's
No,
agree to disagree over there.
there's different definitions of purpose, and so we need to know what we mean by meaning and purpose. But you can have a purpose could be that there is some broader goal independent to your desires and wishes.
Okay, can you give me
Right.
an example of a purpose in heaven?
Yeah, just give me 1 second. I'm giving you the definitions. So one example, one definition of purpose could be that a broader goal independent of the desires and wishes of other people, right? And that might exist in heaven if if all you mean by purpose is something that is independent of the individual wishes and desires of the people there, because there might be some goal of heaven of just living, right? Etc. It might be God's mission that you engage in these activities in heaven everlastingly, and that is the purpose. That's it. So that's one way of kind of understanding purpose. There might be other definitions of purpose, which is goal setting.
No, it's God's
Right?
purpose or your purpose. I'm just failing to understand that. So God wants you to have this purpose. So it's God's purpose for you to have a purpose.
Yeah. So that's what I'm just setting out the definitions. I'm not saying that's I'm just delineating between the different definitions. So you might have because we don't have any other better definition of purpose of meaning, right? And then so one idea is
Meaning
to
is
have
different, right?
they're used
Meaning.
they're used interchangeably. It can be different, yes, it can be, but different. But meaning, purpose, meaning, meaningfulness of it might be a little bit different. But the idea is what theists try to propose is the idea that you have this mind-independent purpose beyond your own whims and desires, some sort of objective, categorical mission hovering above you. Now that may not exist.
See, as soon as you put mission and all those things, you understand that's where there's no mission in heaven, right? That's where I'm saying that having a purpose in heaven doesn't make any
I'm
sense.
just giving you I'm just giving you the definition. I'm just giving you the definition.
That's what I'm saying. Any more explanation you put, then it brings us back to that same issue. Anyway, I think let's move on. Let's tackle.
No, let me finish the point.
Yeah.
Right. So you might have this kind of categorical mission. That's kind of what type of purpose, and that may not be attainable, or might not even make coherent sense in many respects. The other type of purpose is the only other one that I think that makes sense, that only is possibly achievable, is just by having certain preferences, values, and you try to achieve them, and the accomplishment of them gives great gratification, and you feel a sense of fulfillment, right? Now, I think exists in heaven, right? And I don't think the fact that it's instantaneous or always you're always capable of accomplishing it, right? You're always capable of
this fails, Madan. I'll tell you why.
Stops it from being purpose.
This fails
because in this world we may not have free will either, right?
No, okay. Let's move on. I think we are short on time, but then we'll discuss it some other time, right? It fails because of some reasons. But anyways, let's move on. So the next thing he talks about, right? So we did discuss purpose, and I think there is a lot to be discussed on it. Maybe it's just what Madan, myself, and Khali will do is we'll probably do just a stream on purpose, right? And that's probably a big topic. We can do that. And then he talks about all the prophets who were sent as guide. Of course, that's his worldview, and he has to bring those, But he brings those prophets as if that were the reality, right? I think there is a very scant evidence as to even Moses existed or not, right? Abraham, maybe yes. Jesus, Muhammad, yes, of course, right? And that's so very scant evidence for these prophets on ground, right? At least first two, Abraham and Moses, right? I mean, people believe they existed. At least Moses is very, very scant evidence, right? Then he does talk about, and Madan touched upon it, right? And he does bring this argument, and which seems very what do you say, a weak argument to me, that Muhammad's existence or Prophet Muhammad's evidence of his existence is the preserved nature of Quran. I'm not quite sure whether I understood that argument from him as well as everybody else understood. I don't think that's an argument, right? Preservedness of some book does not necessitate that somebody who's claimed to have written that book or claimed to have been revealed that book upon existed. I don't think that follows at all from there. And then lastly, I think he did talk about what was that? Prophecies, right? And that's one more thing that he wanted to know why Islam is true and why Quran is the book from this supernatural being, right? And that it has a falsification test, right? And everybody knows what that falsification test is. And then that. So let me just briefly point out what that falsification test is. It's that contradiction test, right? If it were from somebody else, you would have found many contradictions in it, and people do find it. Like people like myself, Madan, Khali, we do find contradictions. Just that people who believe in that book do not think those are contradictions, and they, for centuries and millennia, they have tried to reconcile those contradictions with whatever interpretations, differences of interpretation, or whatever not, right? And then the last point was that the prophecies, right? And one of the prophecies that he discussed was the Roman victory. I think we have anybody who's interested in. I'm not just going to go into deep on that, because we have discussed prophecies on many streams, on English streams. Go search on our channel, search for prophecies, and any of the Islamic prophecies came to, and I'll maybe just type prophecies, and you'll get 3 or 4 streams where we have, the whole stream is based on just the prophecies, right? So yeah, but I don't think any of the argument that Mohammed Hijab has given so far has, made me say, wow, yes, this is an argument we have, this is like really a solid argument. All these arguments we have tackled many, many times before, right?
All right, but he's not. I don't think he's gone into him properly anyway at this stage. But do you want to just play the video?
Yeah, we'll go into the.
actually just being 5 minutes. In 5 minutes, not only did he present the 4 arguments for Islam, which is the preservation of the Quran, the fact that no one can imitate it, the lack of contradiction, and fourth, the prophecies that the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, made. He spoke about the miraculous nature of Islam existing itself, the fact that it was able to conquer these amazing empires and do so with a lack of resources, and also that them conquering these empires was foretold by the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, in a prophecy. It is amazing. I think it was very well done, very well said. And then on top of that, speaking about the fact and pointing out the necessity that there must be a creator or something that caused the universe if the universe began to exist, and then concluding with the fact that atheism.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back upon this prophecy, right? The Romans will be victorious, and then Prophet Muhammad had said it, like, and all these things, right? I think there is very scant evidence that these. See, I think Madan, we had laid out this very logical criteria a long time back, maybe a year and a half back or so, after that debate review that we did between Mohammed Hijab, Hamza Tzortzis, and these two South African maybe philosophers or whatever, right? One of them was Aaron Fasser, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other one, I forgot the name, right? We have discussed this logical criteria when we were reviewing that debate. There are certain criteria that a very nicely structured prophecy has to fit, and this prophecy misses on so many different marks, and whether it's true or not, you can debate it, right? First thing first, that it has to be made in well before the time, right? And there is no evidence that it was made in like 630s or 624 when it is claimed, because those books that claim it were written 200 years after those events that it is talking about, right? The hadith, the hadith literature was written 200 to 250 years later, and that's where these things are mentioned, right? And even there's one hadith that says that this verse was revealed after Roman had already won. There's so much discrepancy over there. I mean, if you were talking about a prophecy, you have to be very well structured. It has to meet all those very nice high standards to be for it to be called a proper prophecy, and for it to be properly fulfilled, right? Then it makes sense. But none of this is true for this prophecy. Anyway, moving on.
It brings nothing to the table, I think, is just the cherry on top. And I'm interested in seeing how Destiny responds to this. If I were to guess, I don't think he will. I honestly feel that he's going to underperform tremendously here.
So I would say that secularism, as the foundation for, at the very least, the system of governance that we have, and the way that our laws and the way that we dictate how we conduct ourselves, I think is superior to any individual religious system, because it allows for all these different viewpoints to come together. I think that it is no coincidence that we are in a relatively secularly governed country where we have the ability for somebody to speak on their religion, and they can say what they want about it, they can have their beliefs about it, and I have the ability, or anybody else here has the ability, to disagree with that particular viewpoint, but there's still room in society for that viewpoint. I would say that one of the foundational errors, or one of the foundational mistakes or incompatibilities that the more fundamentalist approach or the more hardcore approach to religion has led to is the intolerance in certain societies of other types of beliefs.
Okay, so he's really doing a bunch of nothing here. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a Muslim standing with a Muslim. Let's examine what he said. He said that secularists don't allow for discourse, even atheists.
Madan, I think there's some issue with the title. Basically, Destiny started with not atheism. He started off with secularism, right? So what's the actual title of the debate? Is it secularism versus Islam, or is it atheism versus Islam? Because
I don't know.
I think he it seems like as if he's shooting at a completely different lane. Right, he's shooting the target on a completely different lane. I think target is on lane A, and he's completely on lane Z.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not quite sure. Shall we run it further?
Yeah, just run it.
And the fact that Mohammed Hijab, as a Muslim, is engaging with you in this debate shows that in Islam we're allowed to debate other people, and Allah says in the Quran to discuss and debate with them in a respectful
shall we
way,
skip his
in a
part?
peaceful way. So we don't have a problem with that. He's not really making much of a point here.
It's
And
all right.
that shows me, and his demeanor as well tells me he's not prepared for this at all. And I think that Mohammed Hijab's intro kindly took him aback a bit and showed him just how unprepared he really is for this. But let's continue and see. We'll give him a chance.
So whether that is the way that you conduct yourself in how you do comedy or speech, whether that's the way that you set up your particular neighborhoods, whether that's the types of laws that you pass to allow freedoms for other people in society, especially people that have traditionally been oppressed by systems of governance, could be different types of minority figures, it could be women.
Well, Muslims are oppressed in different countries. Look at Israel, which he's defending all the time. Muslims are oppressed there. Palestinians are oppressed there. They're a secular country, the only liberal democracy in the Middle East. Also, I forgot to mention, he's just presupposing liberalism. He's just presupposing secular liberalism is better. And he quite literally started this entire speech off, or his entire introduction off, by saying, I think it's better because it follows the principles that I believe in, and the principles that he believes in are secular liberalism. So he said, I believe secular liberalism is better because I believe in secular liberalism. That's quite literally what he did.
It could be people of LGBT status. I think that the more secularized society is superior because it creates space for all of those people to exist together in a system that is functional. I think that there is some conversation to be had about the nature of existence. I do think that it's nice that religion gives us easy answers in all our big branches of philosophy. You don't have to do much ethics, much metaphysics, much epistemology when it comes to figuring your religious beliefs, because all the answers are kind of there for you, and maybe that allows you to explore other things in life. But when it comes time to arguing those things to other religious people, the last I checked, I don't think that Islam or Christianity or Judaism have settled their disagreements between who is the one true religion, Abrahamically or any of the other number of religions.
This is a terrible argument. This is like saying, well, Republicans and Democrats, conservatives and liberals haven't settled the debate on which version of secular liberalism is best. It's such a dumb argument. Yeah, human beings can disagree because human beings are different and have wrong opinions. If I think A and you think B, that doesn't mean that I'm right or you're right. We could both be wrong. And it doesn't mean that we can never figure out what the truth is. It's so funny, in all other discussions, Destiny's ready to engage with evidences. All of a sudden, for some reason, with so many atheists like him, who just really are anti-theist or are just anti-religion, they just throw evidence in the air as if it doesn't matter. And they don't engage in arguments. They don't engage in evidence. They don't engage in any primary source. They just waffle on about what they personally believe. And that's exactly what he's doing here.
People choose from. So I think that in terms of societal progression, in terms of the moral progress you could say that we've seen as a society, I think that a larger secular umbrella has allowed this to happen. I don't think it is a coincidence that people find themselves moving more, and we'll talk about immigration later, to these more Western secularized societies, because these societies have such specific carve-outs for different types of beliefs and different types of religions to exist and to express themselves. And I think that having these countries change back to regress into a more religious state, into a more fundamentalist state, where all of us are required to have a particular religious belief, I think would be a regression in the, I would say, philosophical progress that we've made as a society, or as multiple societies, because the idea of being able to enforce your religious ideology or your dogma on some particular group of people, I think is an idea that was tried in the past and hasn't produced the societies that have the most flourishing today, which I would say are the ones that are more secular and do allow for more different points of view.
Okay. Wow. That was very bad. If I'm being honest, that was very. I'm not just saying this. I almost feel bad for him. Like I don't think I'd be able to be up there and speak in front of all those people. It's a daunting thing. So I'm sure he is nervous, and him not being prepared probably has to it. But that was not good. Lastly, he mentioned that people are immigrating to secular societies and out of religious societies, I guess, which is very interesting, because the primary people, the number one group from the refugees, are Muslims. And they leave, right? They seek refuge in other countries because of Western imperialism, because secular countries bomb and create political vacuums in Muslim majority countries. Look at what they did to Afghanistan. Look at what they did to Iraq. Look what they did to Syria. Look what they did to Libya. Do I even need to speak about Palestine? Which, by the way, free Palestine. As you guys can see, I'm wearing my Israeli occupied territory hoodie, and you guys get the message. So if you also want to rep this amazing hoodie, you can get it from Desert. Grabbing a hoodie from them, you'll also homeland, and then allow for immigration. So they think, well, at least I'm not going to be bombed there. They're not going to bomb themselves to kill me, so might as well go. I know that my family came to Canada and left Palestine because of what the Zionists were doing, and they were only allowed to do that because Western imperialism. And then he mentioned philosophical progression and technological advancements, basically saying that our societies have produced great technology, civil discussion and philosophical discussion and discovery and all that stuff. Have you not heard of the golden age of Islam, which is a term, by the way, the West uses? Muslims didn't call it that. The West started calling it that. And it's because Islam basically brought about great thinkers, philosophers, scientists, innovators who would create and innovate different fields, different technologies, and would greatly advance different fields like philosophy, mathematics, economics, sociology, history, it became a codified study because of the Muslims, because of Ibn Khaldun. And these great thinkers existed in the golden age of Islam as Muslims under Islamic empire. So if you want to use progressiveness as an argument for which system works, well, Islam has it. And you can also argue, by the way, that the only reason you guys are as advanced as you are is because you built off the backs of what the Muslims taught, and what the Muslims studied, what the Muslims wrote in European and Western countries, translated the Muslims' works into their own languages like Latin, and then studied the works of the Muslims and enlightened themselves and then built off of it. Meaning you wouldn't be as advanced as you are today without Islam.
Well, I mean, Destiny mentions that secularism is superior to religion, but secularism couldn't.
All right, Martin, do you want to touch upon that? I think part of what he said is right. I think first thing first, I think Destiny is completely off the rails. I don't know what the debate is about. Maybe I'm just confused. Maybe it's Islam versus secularism, maybe. Right? And sorry?
What's the, I don't know what the debate proposition is. Maybe you could do a quick Google search of what the debate proposition was, if it says on Google. You want to try?
Yeah. I think for us to review, I think we'll focus more on hijab's part, right? I'm not too interested in what Destiny has said. Let's say his arguments are bunk, right? Forget about that. I think what he's saying, and see, the part is to review hijab and what's his name, Rami al Khalili, right? Rami al Khalil, right? So what he said is partially right. I think there is a large corpus of Islamic text that's coming from the Islam's era of science. Basically, that's from the 10th century to the centuries ahead, basically up until Al-Ghazali mostly. And at that time, at least, there was some decent science being done from Muslim scholars, and that's everybody acknowledges that. But large chunk of that corpus was built through studying Chinese, was built through studying Greeks. A large portion was built through studying Greeks and the other cultures, the Indians. So it's not as if they, these guys came from some vacuum and then created this huge corpus of. And one more thing was that because Islam was so pervasive and it was conquering almost all the territories, whatever everybody was writing, was probably coming from only Muslims at that time. Even if at that point other cultures were, producing science and text based on science, it wasn't coming through because it was the territory of Muslims at that time. But if you go before that, you'll see a lot of Chinese text about science. If you go even slightly bit before that, you'll see Indians producing scientific text and material, and then Greeks, right? So it's acknowledged that there has been a contribution from not Islamic side, but the Muslims. Some of them were outcasted by their own ulama, basically, right? For them not being Muslims, proper Muslims, because they had very different thoughts. For example, the Mutazilis basically were not considered to be, proper traditional Muslims, basically, by the ulama, basically, right? And then you had some of these guys, Al-Razi, Al-Farabi, Al-Biruni. They have themselves cited a huge influence of Indian mathematics and Greek mathematics. So what are you talking about? What exactly are you talking about, right? How can you, if your history is just so myopic that you're just focusing on this one particular aspect and not looking at around what was happening before that, or even during that period, where these guys got all these texts from, where they had studied, what they have own attributed. If you read Al-Biruni's work, you'll see he attributes his work to Indians. That I have been to India, I studied from Indian mathematicians. So I don't know. These guys are myopic, I think, right? Anyway.
Yeah. Carry on. Let's hear what he has to say.
Yeah.
Exists without it, because secularism is by definition a separation between church and state. So how can you have secularism without the church? You would just have something else. So it can't be superior to it because it incorporates it into its worldview. But the question really is, what's the objective basis for all of his claims? He mentioned LGBT and minority, this, that, and the other. The question is, as an atheist who believes...
That doesn't even make sense. What? Did he just say secularism presupposes the existence of the church and therefore can't be superior to it?
So, yeah, it just didn't make sense, right? Totally.
What? That doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
Something can presuppose the existence of something. First of all, as a general rule, something can presuppose the existence of something and still be superior to it. Yeah. Right? What the heck? God, Allah's world that was created in Islam presupposes the existence. It contains a Satan in it. Right? Isn't Allah superior to Satan? Yeah. Right? Right? What? Oh, is it not? So as a general principle, if something presupposes the existence of something else, it can't be superior. Is that a logical rule? if something presupposes the existence, it can't be superior to it. That doesn't make any sense. First of all, and second of all, secularism does not inherently presuppose the existence of the Christian church. Of course not. That's just a specific historical fact that happened in Europe. That for anti-disestablishmentarianism to occur, which is by the way, that's the longest word in the English dictionary, I think. Maybe not to date, but at least at some point it was, and that's probably not a very good thing anyway, or not a very merit-worthy thing anyway to be the longest word, because it's very easy to make a new one up straight away and it'll be longer. But that's the most, I think, formally, in terms of formal usage and common usage, something that's technically been used as the longest word. But the idea of separating the church from the state was a specific historical event that occurred, right? It doesn't presuppose, secularism doesn't presuppose that. Let's say the Christian church vanishes. Secularism
that doesn't end secularism, right? That doesn't render secularism as,
yeah, it's a specific brand of secularism that occurred. And that it's not, he's talking so weirdly. It's like he's trying to say secularism is ontologically attached to religion. It's not in that sense. Like it needs the religion to be in function, right? All secularism means is without religion. In the purest sense, broadest sense, if you look at the dictionaries, it means without religion. In political philosophy, it means designing a political system that does not draw upon religious or spiritual texts, books, or guidance or laws, right? That's it. It does not depend upon any one specific religion over another, or any religion whatsoever, in a political philosophy sense, right? In terms of political philosophy. That's all it means, right? A very fundamental pillar of it in 17th, 18th, 19th century America, USA and Europe, parts of Europe, French Revolution, was separation of church and state. All it meant was that we're not going to let the church get involved in legislature, the judiciary, or the executive. Not fundamentally, at least not powerfully. There's going to be a separation between demarcation between the church and the state. The state should be governed based on other principles, more inclusive principles, more democratic principles, drawing from a variety of sources, but we're not going to let the church dictate that. And furthermore, we will leave the church alone. We're not going to meddle in the church affairs either, right? That's one version of secularism, maybe some sort of tolerance principle or liberal philosophy that accommodates, by the sheer material fact during that time, a church existed, right? If the church disappears, you'll still have secularism because you'll still tolerate various different views, right? Whilst you won't let any of those views dictate through dogma or through unquestionable authority, the politics, the state, because that will be resolved based on other factors, not because of some scripture or something like that. That's it. Right? It doesn't presuppose the existence of it necessarily, right? Because, and I say necessarily because if religion goes extinct, right? Religion doesn't exist in some sense. It doesn't. I'm just surprised that, by the way, that Hijab has said this. It's kind of baffling me, right? Religion doesn't exist, but you'll still have a secular state. In fact, the most secular states, some of the most conservative right-wing secular states, extremist secular states, try to eliminate all religion, right? Who would say, for example, the Stalin Mao type of regime wasn't secular because they try to eliminate religion. So that's all we mean by secularism, right? But let's grant him, hypothetically, concede that secularism presupposes religion, the existence of religion, or something like that, in order for its definition to have merit, right? That's only because we live in a world where there is religion. But in order to demonstrate its superiority, it doesn't mean that it is.
I think one of the things is that he just fails to understand that secularism sprang into a world where there was religion with a very heavy stronghold, and then it doesn't have it. It kind of slightly there is then the secularism that sprang out of it had an ingrained religious undertone to it, and it doesn't. So he might be conflating that undertone with a requirement, which is not a requirement. It just is so because it sprang into a world where there was a religion, and the religion had such a strong hold on the workings of the world, pretty much, right? And so I think in his mind that he's thinking, and yeah, that's what I see.
The thing is, though, Destiny's point isn't. In order to demonstrate Destiny's point, you just need to compare a secular state with an Islamic state or a Christian state or a theocracy. That's all.
Right.
Because secularism isn't the type of secularism in the West at this moment, by extension of certain laws, accommodates religious views and is a pluralist society, and it safeguards as a human right even. And even in America, for example, the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, safeguards through respect and toleration, the principle of toleration and church-state separation, the idea that you have the right to be a religious believer, just don't interfere in the political systems, and we won't interfere in your church. It's a democratic model. That's it. That's all it means. And if that version of secularism we're taking, in order to demonstrate the fruits of it, we just need to compare that to a state that doesn't do that, right? To a
exactly, yeah.
That's how you compare it. What Hijab is saying is because it can't be superior than a non-secular state, because embedded within the definition of secularism presupposes the existence of religion. Isn't that the stupidest thing that you've ever heard?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Because isn't embedded in the definition of a Islamic caliphate the toleration of certain religions as well?
Totally.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They don't wipe out every religion, do they? They're going to allow the people of the book. But does that mean, therefore, since the Islamic caliphate contains a tenet within it that allows a principle, separation?
Every.
Does that mean Christianity within an Islamic caliphate is no more? The caliphate is no more superior than the Christianity within that? No, they believe caliphate is superior, right? The caliphate is superior than Christianity. Islam is superior. So they have the same mirror image problem if this is the case, because even in their caliphate, they will have to tolerate people of the book. They can't exterminate them, they can't kill them, but the people of the book cannot be in positions of authority or power within the legislature. They can't be part of the Khalifa. They can't be a part of the judiciary. So it presupposes the existence of them existing. They tolerate them, but that doesn't. So by his logic, Islam is no more superior than Christianity and Judaism and the people of the book. Wow, mind has exploded. Clearly, isn't thinking fast enough on his feet. Yeah.
All right, let's move on.
Believes that we are essentially atoms whizzing around. This is the physicalist. This is the materialist assumption. How can you get from that to objective morality in the first place? How can you ascertain that liberalism is the superior ideology from first principles, from a scientific or mathematical perspective? You can't do that. It's not possible, because Kant couldn't do that, because J.S. Mill couldn't do that, because greater people than me and you couldn't do that. Therefore, you won't be able to do that. Secondly, I will say this. I mean, he mentioned something about intolerance, which we'll come to in a second, but he mentions, and I was very surprised when I, to be honest with you, heard this. He mentions intolerance. Let's go to this straight away, actually. This is a man who supports a genocide. This is a man who was going to the IDF, telling the IDF that, when you're doing your atrocities, make sure you hide them and don't take pictures of them. You're going to talk to us about this? You're going to be sanctimonious and talk about minority rights? What minorities are you talking about? The minorities that you prefer, that the white man prefers.
Oh man, that was just beautiful. That was absolutely beautiful, and I'm so happy that he called.
Okay. All right. He talked a few things now, right? I think one of the main point I would like for us to handle over here is that atheism can't drive objective morality from physicalism or just atoms whizzing by, right? I think that's I'm just paraphrasing what he said, right? And also he said you can't have an ought from an is, right? I think this is exactly the same problem they are going to have in their divine command theory. You just can't say, God commanded, that's why you ought to do it, right? I mean, maybe it's not exactly the same as, what it is to what command. Maybe that's the difference, and maybe Mahadin has a different opinion than I have over here. But I would still say, why do you have to follow what God says? Just because he says, that's why you have to follow? Or it is for your betterment, that's why you have to follow? Then again, there is something that is better for you, you have to follow. There is, it is better. So there is an is and there is an ought. So I think people might have different take on it. I think at least my take here is that is ought problem is a logical problem, and you just can't surmount it, whether it be you be physicalist or you be a divine command theorist, pretty much, right? I just
that's
think
right.
I don't.
So I mean, you can compare these separate theories, the divine command theory with a naturalist ethical theory that gives rise to a political philosophy that ultimately gives rise to, let's say, liberalism or one form of secularism or some forms of liberalism. So it has to be built on top of some foundations, and that's what hijab is demanding. But you can ultimately compare it by comparing the Islamic argument, the Islamic divine command theory, versus the naturalist ethical theory, let's say. And people might think that we're doing a taqwa fallacy, I think it's called, taqwa, or whatever however you want to pronounce it, because I never can pronounce that.
Tutukwe. Yeah.
Tutukwe. By saying that, but Islam has this problem as well. It's not. It's to compare the theories and see which one has the least amount of problems. Is to compare the theories. Is Islam offering anything better? Is to compare the theories and to show that if both theories contain the same riddles and same issues, then Islam is no longer not offering anything better. But there might be other stuff within naturalism that has better stuff, right? Or other pearls, other wisdom, other elements that is has more explanatory force, right? That's how you compare the merits of theories. So it's not a taqwa fallacy. Because we're not saying that because Islam has this problem, therefore we can have this problem, right? This could be a problem within all philosophies, right? But we try to. My proposition is that we should accept any theory that has the least amount of problems and has at least sufficiently weighty, explanatory and force to explain the world, right? What's in the world, right? Despite those problems. And if Islam is supposed to be a superior alternative, it should get rid of those problems or pose less problems. And we don't get that with Islam, right? So when it comes to, let's say, ethical naturalism, which I'm using it broadly as an umbrella term to cover very many different types of ethical theories, one version of where you can ground it is what like people like Shelley Kagan and many moral philosophers do, is to say that it doesn't have to be reduced to atoms. We're not saying atoms give rise to ethics. We're not that hijab has demanded from us to say, how do you get from little bits of atoms and molecules whizzing around? How do you produce this vast, elaborate ethical theory, right? And the point is, it's not. We're not doing. This is called ethical natural. What's it called? Yeah, it's a form of ethical naturalism that is called reductionism, right? That the ethics reduces to physics, and you don't have to be that. A lot of ethical philosophers are not that, and in fact, I don't think that's the most popular view. A very, very popular stride right now is that it's not reducible to physics. It's not material. It's not something that materials give rise to. It's a analytical fact, and analytical facts are not reducible to materials, right? It's not as though it's a fact that exists out of a chemical reaction. It is, even if there weren't any chemical reactions, it'll still be true because it's an analytical truth in all possible worlds. And that's a very popular view, right? Which is like all bachelors are unmarried. Like a square has four sides, triangles have 180, 180, add up to 180 degrees, all of its angles. And these are going to be true on all possible worlds. They're necessary facts. It's a necessary fact that, for example, throwing acid on the face of a baby, all things being equal, and there's no other reason to do so, and just doing it out of just self-gratification is immoral. That's it. That is a self-contained, is true by definition. True by definition.
Right. And then, so Martin, yeah, totally. I totally understand. I mean, totally agree with you on that. And there's so many different, philosophical theories out there that, that are for considered to be, providing objective moral grounds without going into the reductionist theory. And I'm not quite sure why these guys always cling on to this atoms whizzing around, and why do have to they have to go into this reductionist naturalistic moral theory.
Yeah, and it's very hard to
there
articulate.
is this veil of ignorance by John Rawls doesn't assume that there's Kantian morality.
Yeah, these are analytical.
There's so many
These are analytical systems. I mean, somebody like Hijab should know more about this, because he himself
has studied philosophy.
That too. But also these are from the school of thought that rationalism matters. We can't always compress everything into an empirical worldview. Empiricism can't explain everything. It's not. Empiricism not in the road. Materialism can't explain everything, right? So they already lean in that direction to accept a God, because they think non-material things can exist, right? You don't have to be an atheist and believe in only material things exist. You can be like Graham Oppy, for example. He's a naturalist. Causally, but he thinks it's an open question how numbers exist. He's not necessarily sure that numbers can be reduced to things, right? He's not sure that a number exists through, as a result of chemical reactions, right? Numbers may exist in the sense of analytical truth, and he's not a Platonist. He doesn't think these are abstract facts that float around somewhere in this magic kingdom. He actually makes the argument that his viewpoint is something in between Platonism and reductionism, right? And it's closer to an analytical fact, right? And he's an atheist. He's a naturalist.
Totally, yeah. I mean, you can have that viewpoint and still be a naturalist in a sense, right?
Yeah.
And
he believes in causal. Yeah, he believes that causal reality is natural.
Is natural, by natural or physicalist, right? Yeah, in that sense, at least.
Yeah, but these things are not part of causal reality, right? Numbers are not part of the determinant.
Numbers are not causally. They're causally inert in a sense, right?
Yeah. They're not part of the science of the world. They're not part of what's happening in the universe, right? We use them, but they're not there in the universe. So he believes that these are somewhat analytical facts, and he's still Graham Oppy likens the way 2 + 2 = 4 being an analytical fact, a necessary truth, to the fact that to an ethical fact. For example, ethical facts, which is punching somebody in the face for no good moral reason, is morally wrong. It's an ethical fact, right? Where is that? Is it present at a molecular level? No, it's not. It's just an analytical fact, right? And people like Hamza and Hijab shouldn't be discriminatory against this viewpoint, because nobody's saying that, because they want the atheist to already accept things that are beyond the physical. Well, we do accept certain things that might be beyond the physical here. We're just not siding with
I think they have,
right?
They have this tendency to assume that everyone who's an atheist is just, a physicalist or materialist or naturalist, right? You'll find a lot of philosophers and even non-philosopher atheists who are not physicalists or naturalists, basically. And then, that's Madan just gave an example. Graham Oppy is one of those. Maybe even Shelley Kagan probably is. I don't know.
So they don't believe ethics can reduce to physical facts, but they believe that not everything can reduce to physical facts. Like, for example, mathematics, numbers, and other analytical truths and necessary truths.
Maybe
right?
even thoughts, probably ideas. These are
Also,
non-reductionist things.
yeah,
Probably, yeah, yeah. Some
yeah,
people consider ideas or thoughts to be, non-physical, of course, and maybe some people think it's an emergent property of brains
yeah.
or minds. So, there you go.
That's
You
right.
have
That's right.
your different schools, probably.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So I mean, I don't think the mind is not. I think the mind is reducible to physics. But what I'm saying is that the content of the minds, the
Yeah,
things
yeah.
that we think about, certain ideas that are
Mhm.
that are true in all possible worlds, even if the mind didn't exist, those would be that's a strong contender to be still true on all possible worlds, right? It's
Right.
very difficult to see how 2 + 2 = 4 will suddenly become false and untrue if minds don't exist. It's difficult to see how a triangle is not going to add up to 180 degrees. Even if a mind didn't exist and could not conceive of it, right? It will still be the case that is in
That
theory.
is the case, right? Yeah.
Yes, in theory, if there were to be a mind, it would know that would have to be the case, right? And therefore, there's a fact about that matter that exists, but not as a Platonic fact. It's more of a form of a rule that requires intelligence to realize. It will be unrealized, but it will be to be discovered, right? You just need a mind to discover it. And why is it true? It's not because of atoms. It's just is by the words alone, right? It's a fact of these concepts, and it's a fact of a concept of morality that there must be certain facts about it that you can't just throw you can't just throw acid in the face of a child. It will be morally wrong by the self-contained definition. It's like a tautology, right? Just like
It's just by definition, basically.
yes,
I mean,
yeah,
you just can say that.
that's right.
It's just like saying, a bachelor is someone who's not married,
Yeah,
right? That's the
yeah,
definition, basically.
yeah. That's right. So if it's like that, then everything else can be built on top of that. Once you've had the first kind of bedroom, first foundation of what morality is as an analytical truth, like you can't just kill somebody innocently, then you can build from that a structure like political, like Kant's deontological principle or John Rawls'
Veil of
principle of
ignorance, right? Yeah.
ignorance, right? Or many of the others, and work through them, and which one adheres to this concept of morality more closely. Yeah, that's in none of these scenarios you might be able to really strongly prove that you can't get it. You can get it up from an is, but you can't get it on divine command theory either. But with Euthophria dilemma, you dissociate the force of what divine command theory is really doing. We've talked about Eutho for so many times, so I'm not going to go into it. But the conclusion of it is that what makes God moral isn't his commands. It's again something very similar to ethical naturalism, which is those concepts, those virtues, right? So on ethical naturalism, it'll be wrong to go kill a baby wrongly because by definition, morality is you are of one particular way. A virtue, maybe you compassion or caring for others, altruism, and there's a contradiction involved, right? The same is the case on divine command theory. Yeah, the reason God's commands are good is not because he commands it, it's because of certain characteristics of compassion, mercy, benevolence. So we have the same.
Madan, they can go through, they can bite the bullet and say, no, God's commands are good just because who he is by nature, and he's by nature good, right? That's the essence of him, basically, right? Him or her, whatever you are, it, right? But then again, you go into this loop of, it's a circular argument. What is good? Because God commands it, right? And then whatever God commands is good. Why is it good? Because it's in his nature. What is good? Then define good. What is good about God's nature? Because that's good, whatever you think. I think that's where you go into a circularity, basically. You just can't have a definition of good and then you can't define why God is good or why God's essence is good, right? It just doesn't make sense. You just can't get out of it. And that's a perennial problem that we have been stuck, and that's why for probably more than 2,300 years, Euthyphro's dilemma has been, people have tried to, circumvent it somehow, but then doesn't really, you just can't circumvent it. People try to say it's God's essence and all those things, but it just doesn't work. It just fails, basically. So anyway, Madan, I think it's time to close. 1 hour 35 minutes. I think after a long time, I enjoyed this stream, to be honest, and that's why probably we went by 30. When we started the stream, I told Madan we'll run it for an hour, but then we are already 35 minutes over it. We would have loved to finish another 15 or so minutes remaining in this this review. Maybe we'll pick it up some other time. Next time we have some other things as well that we want to pick up. I think, what is that? Stephen Myers, I think, stream that we wanted to review, Mahadan.
Yeah, that's right.
So we'll do that next. But before we do that, before we leave, I think you all can see we have another English-only channel which we haven't streamed on for ages. It's www.youtube.com/unveilingfaith. Please like, subscribe, and share that, this stream, as well as go subscribe over there. And if you are able and can support us financially, please support us on patreon.com/Philo Sapience or buymeacoffee.com/Philo Sapience, or via super chats or super stickers, or maybe buying memberships, or whatever means you can support us if you're able. But if you're not able, then maybe what you can do, and the best you can do, is just keep commenting, just keep bringing your whoever who might be interested in these kind of streams, really thought-provoking streams. Maybe make comments underneath once the streams are over, and then tell your friends, come comment, have a discussion, have drop by in one of our live streams, become as a guest, and have a conversation, pose your question, maybe ask something, maybe correct us, or whatever you may have, right? And one more thing, last thing that I would say over here is that our streams, anyone who has watched us for maybe over 2 years, it's been over 2.5 years, I guess, we on this channel, critique religions, ideologies, whether it be Islam. We do Islam because all three of us, maybe even 4 of us, Uqba hasn't been joining, but maybe one of these days he will. We critique it because we understand Islam better than probably other religions, but we do criticize other religions as well. For us, religions are all man-made. We do think that there's some good things about in every religion, but maybe on a broader level, they are all false and they have regressive nature, basically, right? All of them. And that's why we critique them. We never critique any particular community or people, don't use ad hominems, all those things, right? Don't do blasphemy, don't tolerate blasphemy, and all those things. So yeah, I just wanted to, spell that out very clearly to everybody. Madan, if you have any finishing, closing remarks.
No, I don't.
Yeah. All right, then with that, thank you everybody, whoever joined, whoever's going to listen to it. Please like, subscribe, and share. Do comment, and then see you next time. Maybe hopefully next weekend or something like that. So ciao for now. Bye.